Good morning, everybody. I'm Kristina, and this is Cassidy. We are here this morning, not at the Missouri Botanical Garden, but actually in Chesterfield at the Butterfly House. So we are here to give you a tour of this facility and the beautiful conservatory, which you'll hear a little bit more about later, is full of blue Morpho butterflies right now. So I'm going to turn this camera around, and we are going to talk to Fred today.
Good morning. All right, well, as Kristina mentioned, we are here at the Butterfly House. We're celebrating Morpho Mardi Gras. For those that don't know what that is our reopening after our January closure. We closed down to take care of housekeeping in the conservatory, make sure our collections are right where we want them to be, do some trimming back. And then we reopened with Morpho Mardi Gras, because what better way to open than with a party? And what better party animals than blue morphos? So we're going to see quite a few of those when we go in the conservatory. But like any Mardi Gras, when you think about Mardi Gras, you think about parties and parades. And when you come right into our building, the first thing that's going to greet you is our bug parade. Because we're more than just butterflies at the Butterfly House. We have a lot of invertebrate friends, and that's what we have around here. So we have a bunch of great bugs on display, from the bright taxicab beetles, assassin bugs, which are only dangerous if you're another bug, so the rest of us don't have to worry about them sneaking up on us. So all sorts of cool animals for folks to meet up close and personal. One of our big goals here is to let people realize that we can be neighbors with all sorts of bugs, not necessarily just the butterflies. Butterflies have the good reputation. The other bugs, maybe not quite as much, but from our perspective, these guys are just as important as the butterflies. You're looking at an atlas beetle right now. This is a Southeast Asian beetle, and as impressive as it looks, with those big horns on its pronotum, it is a fruit eater. It's right next to one of its favorite treats, which is a tasty slice of banana. The nice thing about these bugs is they're not competing with us for bananas. I like mine a little bit on the brown side. I know my family, once there's a spot of brown on it, they leave it for me. But these guys like it very, very brown. And that's one of the things that these guys help us do, is take those fruits that no one else wants, and they turn it right back into soil, at least soil nutrients. So really great guys, kind of impressive looking, maybe a little intimidating, but they're banana eaters, and how bad can you be if you're a banana eater? Talking about party animals, its neighbor is one of our non-insect friends, our Caribbean hermit crabs. And these guys are always wearing a costume. Now, they're also hiding. Oh, there they are. They're up high.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that these guys can climb. And crabs aren't strictly aquatic. They can be found terrestrially as well, and there's some very large land crabs that you can find throughout the world. These guys aren't quite as big, but they're, despite the name being hermits, these guys are social, so they like to hang out together. They hang out together as well as I do with my siblings, which is we get along most of the time, but we'll squabble from time to time as well. Mom, if you're listening, please don't chime in, because we only squabble time to time. Well, these guys, as they outgrow that shell, even though they're crabs, they have their own shell. They actually move into a bigger vacated shell from a snail, from aquatic snails. These guys are hanging out there with their party beads, like any good Mardi Gras reveler. If we slide down, one of the things you mentioned, there's a lot of bugs out there that people immediately don't have great opinions of. Scorpions are one that people are a little worried about as well. This is an Asian blue forest scorpion. And you can tell a lot about a scorpion by the size of those front pinchers. As a general rule, the larger the pincher, the less likely they are to use their stabby stab in the back there, their envenomation, their stinger. So this animal has relatively large pinchers, so they're going to mostly subdue their prey with their claws and only sting as necessary. One of the largest scorpions that looks a lot like this, called the emperor scorpion, is big and impressive, but when you take a look at its massive pinchers, it tells you that they're not as likely to use envenomation as a technique to subdue prey. And down below, his lower neighbor isn't quite as showy. We're not going to be able to see him very well because he's hiding underneath that rock. He's a desert hairy scorpion, but he's roommates with blue death-feigning beetles. And they're kind of an unlikely odd couple, because scorpion is an insect eater, and they use their stinger a lot. They've got pretty small pinchers, so you would think that maybe these death fainters are in danger, but this isn't a food source for them. And part of it is the size, and part of it is the thickness of their exoskeleton. Their exoskeleton's thick enough that they're protected from the scorpion, because the scorpion's pincher isn't strong enough to get, or the stinger is not strong enough to get through that carapace. So as unlikely of roommates as they are, they're not harm to each other, and the death fainting beetles are fruit eaters, so of course the scorpion has nothing to worry about from these guys. As the name implies, when they feel threatened, they will roll over on their back and pretend to be dead. And that, along with a very thick exoskeleton, is their main method for survival. So we move down. I always like to show these guys off.
Oh yeah.
Take a look at that mantis in the back.
Wow.
Now, we've fortunately been in the news a fair amount with the praying mantises, because we're one of the facilities that the Fish and Wildlife Service uses as homes for animals like this when they are illegally obtained. And this is a devil's flower mantis, and it was one that was confiscated. There is you name any animal, and I think we talked about this last tour, that there is a market for it. People, hobbyists who would like them in their home. I've always told people I love having these at work. For pets, I usually like something that's going to greet me, but there's a lot of people that want this sort of thing in their home as well and admire their beauty at home. But not all, those don't always come through the best sources. So this particular insect, along with about 300 of its siblings, were confiscated because someone tried to bring them in illegally. And this one is not a full adult yet. When it becomes an adult, it'll look a lot more like a flower. And that's how this mantis gets its prey. It costumes itself like a flower, and when an animal comes in to get a tasty nectar treat, if it goes to the wrong flower, it becomes the tasty treat instead. A pretty cool bug.
And this was one you said was in a confiscated shipment. So this actually was this guy or gal hatched here, correct? Because you had the egg cases.
Correct. We had an illegal shipment in March, about the same time you guys visited us last for tour, and we had just ootheca, just egg cases, and we got about 500 young mantises out of that. This time we got not only some ootheca, but we also got some hatched ones. This one, because it's still with us, is probably one that hatched here. The lifespan for a lot of these bugs isn't that long. They're going to last a season, which a season could be 3 months to maybe a year. Some bugs will live past that, especially the ones that are found in tropical spots where they can survive the cold winter. So this one isn't a full adult yet. This one's probably only 2 or 3 months old if I had to take a wild guess at it. But this one came out of its egg case here.
Oh, cool.
Black beauty stick insect. Yeah, we got quite a few
Oh yeah.
hanging out. This is one of those cases where things come together well, because these stick insects love, obviously, plants. And having the conservatory that we have to keep our plants pruned to make sure that they're flowering, make sure that they're healthy. And so instead of wasting that, some of these species we can actually take, prune, and give to our bugs. So this porterweed is harvested in our own conservatory. The porterweed flowers are a favorite of butterflies, a great nectar source, and then the leaves are a great food source for these stick insects. So it helps us put less into compost. I guess technically it's still going to compost. These guys are doing a compost.
How many do you have in here? There's like this whole back wall is covered in these guys.
Yeah.
Usually I try to enlist visitors to count them for us, especially the young ones. And it's the 4-year-olds that tend to take me up on that offer. So we haven't had an accurate count yet. This is a breeding colony, so we have males and females in here. And these
I
guys,
see little babies,
yeah,
or smaller.
yeah, and babies, immatures. So these guys breed, lay their eggs in the substrate, and then the youngins hatch, and the population goes through cycles. I know my daughters love to learn about this, but it's the females that are the larger. So the big ones are the females, the small ones are the males. Not in common in invertebrate world, where the females have the muscle. When most people think of stick insects, they think of the brown stick insects or leaf insects with the greens. These guys are a beautiful black with the red eyes. Now, this next neighbor is one of our, an animal that's kind of hot in the news for us right now, at least, and pretty recognizable, and that's the hissing roach. So these are roaches from Madagascar. These ones don't have the obvious, don't have the same wing structure that a lot of the other roaches, especially the ones that we associate with humans. You know, less than 1% of roach species actually associate with humans at all, and even fewer of those are actually considered pests. But we have an idea in our head of what a cockroach looks like, and usually that idea is very much paired with very strong feelings. And you know, it's Valentine's time, we all are celebrating our strong feelings, but most of us aren't celebrating our strong feelings for roaches. However, we're out to change that. We'll talk about that a little bit later when I show you our orange-head roaches. But this is a very iconic roach. The hissing roach, it does hiss when it is threatened or when it wants to impress another cockroach in the area. And unlike some of the other counterparts, they're very smooth backed. They don't have those rugged wings that we see on others. I know the garden does a lot of work in Madagascar, and I guarantee our researchers see these guys out there on a pretty regular basis. So while we're talking about roaches, we've got a couple tarantulas here. This is a good time to kind of focus on a few of them. Let me just point out the giant cave roach in here. Makes a lot of people thankful they're not living in a cave, but these are not a pest species. These are ones that are found in caves in Central and South America, and just a large charismatic roach species.
It's waving at you, Christina.
Yeah, it is.
Let's look at, and you see it's grooming itself. And that's one of the things that when people think about roaches, they think about how dirty they are. But roaches are only as dirty as their environment, and they are fastidious groomers. So they are cleaning their legs, their antenna, they're keeping themselves as clean as possible. So while they're associated with dirt, they're not the dirtiest of animals.
We have a question from Rosemary who's wondering what they eat.
Roaches are great nutrient recyclers. They take organic matter and turn it back into soil. And often they're taking the stuff that other animals don't want. So sometimes leaf litter, sometimes old fruit. Obviously here, their meal's a little bit more gourmet than they would get if they were living out in the rainforest. So we feed them fruits and vegetables, like there's some banana in here for them. Bananas, one of the favorites for almost all of the animals here. I see a question come out, do roaches fly? And some species are capable of flight, some better than others. These guys have wings, and they will be capable of some flight, but for most of the time, roaches' flight has more to do with escaping something. And well, I'm not going to necessarily call it graceful flight, it's more graceful falling. That way when you fall out of a tree or off of a surface because you're being chased by a bird, you're going to land relatively unscathed, more unscathed than you would be if the bird got a hold of you, but you're not going to necessarily be capable of powered flight. In fact, what are currently our most famous roaches are, we use that to our advantage in how we display them. So around the corner, we have our As Seen on Cameo roach dedication tank. These are orange-head roaches from Central and South America. And as you can see, these guys have wings as well. And this is an open-top display because they can't fly up. So we have an adult here. Adults in this species, when they go through that final molt to become an adult, their wings they metamorphoses with wings. And then these are the juveniles. So for those that are interested in dedicating a roach to something or someone, that's something we're offering right now through the Cameo app, which is a dedicated roach. And for us, it has a lot more to do with sharing the message of how positive roaches are. So it's a little fun around Valentine's time, but no matter what the dedication is for, who it's for, we have them dedicated to all sorts of different situations and people. The roaches always come out smelling like a rose, at least figuratively, because they still smell like roaches. But they are a great animal. I always tell people, no matter what food you like, it's roaches and other decomposers you have to thank for that, because these guys are really important for soil health. So if you choose the dedicated roach, you can come see it for yourself here at the Butterfly House on your next visit. And they've got their Mardi Gras friend in there. So those are our, a quick tour of our non-butterfly bugs. But of course, we are the butterfly house. So one of the things that we have in spades are butterflies. So it seems about time to head into the conservatory, our tropical conservatory, where we're focusing on the blue morphos. Now I can tell you that this is one of the best times to work at the butterfly house because it might be 14 degrees outside, but it's always 75 degrees in the tropics, and that's where we're going to head. So what we're going to do to make sure that we give each other space, I'm going to let Kristina and Cassidy head through first, and then I will meet you guys in there, and we'll see some butterflies.
Sounds good.
Tell us a little bit about that sort of butterfly airlock that we just went through.
That's essentially what it is. If you've ever seen a sci-fi thing, you see the airlock to keep the space full of oxygen for the humans. For us, it's a matter of keeping the butterflies in here. So it's not just for the butterflies. Obviously, tropical butterflies are not going to fare well in Missouri, but it has more to do with the potential of these butterflies to introduce a novel parasite or virus into the local population. That we are a quarantine facility. We want to make sure that none of these butterflies get out and pass anything on. It's kind of a very telling or a very timely message with that, with what we're going through as a human species right now. So you saw Cassidy and Kristina come through a double door system. We make sure one door shut at all times. That way all the butterflies end up in here, and at worst, they get into there, and then we help get them back into the tropics where they're designed to live anyway. And these are all tropical species, so if one were to get out into Missouri, right now, it's not going to last long.
Yeah.
I don't think I would last.
I was
long
just going to
outside.
say the same thing.
So you see straight ahead some blue morphos feasting. When we think of butterflies, we always think about butterflies eating nectar, but not all butterflies are nectar eaters. Blue morphos will eat the juices from rotting fruits and sometimes fermenting fruits. Some will also eat the fluids from animals that have died, or even from poop piles. So lepidopterans will eat all sorts of different things. A lot of them are nectar eaters, so that's what this conservatory is about. We're managing our plants not just for the humans, but probably more importantly for the bugs, that the butterflies have a food source. And then for those that are not the big nectar eaters, we give them the fruits. Now there's an imposter in here. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 butterflies, and only 4 of those are morphos. Back in the back with a different eye spot pattern, that is an owl butterfly.
Oh.
Here.
So all of them, the blue morphos are known for that blue color, but they want to be careful with that. That draws attention to them. And sometimes when you're a butterfly, you want to draw attention. Other times you want to stay hidden because they're not at the top of the food chain. So with those wings closed, when they're at rest, it allows them to blend in. And the eye spots, the thought behind that is that when a predator sees that, they might mistake that for a set of eyes, which means the animal is much bigger than the butterflies are. You'll see that on a lot of different animals, including some cats, where they have eye spots on the back of their ears or what look like eyes. So it's a trick that Mother Nature uses across many taxa, and it's the butterflies are hoping that it makes other animals think twice about approaching them. The blue, which is very flashy, you'd think would be very bad for camouflage. The thought is, with that, it can flash to attract mates because they still want to be attractive, but because it's open and closing, it might make it more difficult for birds to track them in flight because they flash on and flash off, flash on and flash off. So it might be a sort of cryptic coloration to help avoid predation when they're in flight. So it's like, here I am, here I'm not, here I am, here I'm not. So they're a pretty cool animal, even amongst butterflies. And that blue is really unique because it's very rare to actually find blue pigment in animals, and these guys don't have that. They use structural physics to make the blue light appear to you. They scatter the other light, and they focus the blue light to bounce off in the correct way. So they're not actually blue, they're just tricking us into seeing the blue. Like a prism can change the way colors look.
And I will say it probably, I don't know how well it's picking up on the camera because they're moving so quickly, but we are having blue morphos like whiz by our heads.
Yeah.
As we're talking. So, you know, I know myself, I've had trouble capturing them on camera because they don't want to sit still. But unless they're eating, of course.
Right.
But they are fluttering around us quite a bit. So you're not quite seeing it on camera. It's not for lack of there being butterflies here. It's just hard to keep up with them.
So the shameless plug, you know, it's warm in here and the blue is beautiful, so come visit. And we might see a few more as we round the corner. Sometimes when we get through these pathways, you'll see morphos flying along disturbed areas because those have a nice longer flight area. So if there's animal runs in the rainforest or human pathways, they'll fly alongst those, and that's where you'll see the blue flashing on and off. So we'll see that on our own pathways as well.
Here's a non-morpho. It's
There's a type of long one.
posing for us. Oh, camera shot.
It decided it's done.
Yeah, there you can see he's flicking his wings a little bit, or he was.
Yeah, look at that.
So he's trying to say something to the other butterfly, or she is. You know, I cannot tell at a glance whether they're male or female. But often it's the males that are flashing, and usually it's the males that are saying either go away if it's another male, or may I approach closer if it's a female. So it's a little quieter in here than normal. We're doing that for sound because usually we have our waterfall on to kind of create the ambiance of, well, the waterfall is effective for us because it helps put moisture in the air, but also makes it feel even more tropical when you've got a waterfall falling in the background as you're looking out on the snow, on the frozen pond. So you can't not talk about the plants that are in here as well. I know we saw this porterweed over here being eaten by the black beauty stick insects, but this is a really important nectar source for the butterflies. These beautiful purple flowers. We got one hanging out right there, and you also see the ones on the ledge checking out outside. In fact, if you pan up and to the left, you're going to see quite a few morphos just hanging out on the windows. It's always kind of fun to see these guys while the snow is coming down. In fact, that's probably one of my favorite times to be in here. You've got a snowfall coming down, it's tropical, and you've got butterflies gazing out on the snow.
Well, and you were talking about the plants, and just to point out here, you know, we have the same labels here that you would see at the Missouri Botanical Garden. So I've noticed a few plants that seem familiar to me. So philodendron being one of those.
Right.
But those have the same labels that you would see if you were at the Missouri Botanical Garden. So there is that plant forward aspect in addition to the butterfly.
So you can't tell the story of conservation without including both plants and animals, because that relationship, we're all tied together. So we talk about butterflies, if we're talking about butterfly conservation, we're talking about plant conservation at the same time. And if you're talking about plant conservation, you're talking about insect conservation as well at the same time, because when it comes to pollination, the most effective pollinators are going to be the insect or the bug pollinators. You know, plants use lots of different varieties. There'll be wind pollination, some mammals and birds as well, but a lot of them, of course, rely on butterflies and beetles and bees and wasps for the pollination. So those stories are intertwined in a way that we can't pull it apart. So while displaying butterflies, and those are of course, one of the big draws when you name your facility after it, the plants are a hugely important aspect of that. One of the things we do like to share is, you know, because of our horticulture team's work, we can provide all of the nectar that our 1,000 to 2,000 butterflies need at one time without using artificial nectar. So it's a big credit to our horticulture team for maintaining this not only as a beautiful place to visit, but as a food source for that many butterflies, and not having to supplement with artificial nectar is something that, you know, we're going to strive to continue to do, because the best nectar for these guys is what they get from plants. So all sorts of great flowering plants as we walk through here. Ixora.
Yeah, poof ball.
Yeah.
tree. There's
Yeah.
one of these at the main garden campus as well.
And our collection is, the gardens collection as well, just an off-site.
Oh, there's a really pretty hibiscus.
Oh yeah,
And
look
we
at
look
that.
at hibiscus, good for butterflies, but also great for leafcutter ants. We have a couple colonies.
Oh,
of
look at
leafcutter
that.
ants. It's fun to see these guys too, especially those butterflies. They'll have pollen all over the leading wing edge, especially when visiting the hibiscus. But this is a food source for our leafcutter ant colony as well. So when they trim back in here, we can take those and put them into leaf cutters. They love the flowers as well as the leaves. Hibiscus is actually a great plant for a lot of different animals. My former role at another zoo, we would use it to feed turtles and all sorts of other animals that like the leaves. The hibiscus, giraffe like hibiscus for those who don't know.
We just had a question from Lorraine. Where is the Butterfly House?
Butterfly House is in Chesterfield, Missouri, so we're not far from the city. We're probably about a 25-minute drive if you're coming from downtown, just across the river from St. Charles. So we're relatively close to just about everything. The further you go north of us, we go a little bit further, but Chesterfield, Missouri, just off of 64. We've got a program running through here today. So we've got a hermit crab hidden for our Little Bugs program. So we'll have some toddlers coming through in just a few moments trying to find those, and that's going to be the craft for the day as well. The pond certainly things over.
Oh yeah, I bet that will be frozen most of this week.
Some beautiful orchids on display as well. We have ours span throughout. So if you're missing your orchid fix with the orchid show not being able to be held this year, we've got orchids throughout the conservatory in here. Obviously not quite in the numbers of the orchid show, but still enough to gaze at.
And for anyone who is a big fan of orchids, make sure to keep your eye on our social media this week because we are going to be giving a sort of virtual orchid show featuring different orchids in our collection throughout the week.
Well, that's exciting. We've also got our bog down here. This is something that we installed around Halloween, but are carnivorous plants. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to overwinter these. Some of them are tropical, so they're not looking to overwinter, but the native species, we're playing around with the husbandry of the plants to see about keeping them overwintered and possibly living longer. The butterwort is in flower, which is kind of cool back there. The butterworts are a tropical species, and a lot of times you'll find them near waterfalls, as they're not rooted like other plants. They're more epiphytic, so their root structure isn't necessarily in soil, so that's why we have a lot of hanging baskets around here. But you got pitcher plants.
Sundew.
Yep.
Right there.
Yep, a couple of Cape Sundew there.
Here's the
Some Venus
one
flytrap.
everybody knows.
Oh yeah.
And there's a couple different types of pitcher plants. The ones with the tall stalks that come up. These are relatively small species. There are species in Southeast Asia that would be big enough for a butterfly to get into. Some, probably 3 or 4 inch wide mouths. And we were just watching a story about one they found that had a mouse had fallen into.
Oh wow.
And the digestive juices were strong enough to digest the mouse. So ours aren't that big and no risk to our butterflies. But with fruit, we have fruit flies, so these guys will help with those guys.
Oh yeah, there's some Nepenthes too, the hanging pitcher plants.
Yeah. So as we go around the corner, for those that are frequent visitors to the Butterfly House, you're going to notice a big change for the next 4 or 5 months, because we are excited about a grant we received that's going to help us actually expand our animal lab, our insect lab. All of our butterflies, when they come in, they have to have the appropriate spot to finish their metamorphosis out of the pupal stage into the adult, such as this paper kite here. So we are about ready to start construction, as once all the paperwork finally gets through, on expanding that lab to be about twice the size of what it was. You know, as we've grown over the years, more than just butterflies, adding more and more species, bug species to our collection. We outgrew our lab, and we're now going to get a chance to make that a much bigger and a much better space for our entomology team to work in. The paper kite that you're showing, one of the most common questions we get asked is how long do the butterflies live? And usually people are wondering, how long do they live as adults? That's the main point of the question. And a paper kite here, when we initially closed during closure, was the longest lived resident that I'm aware of as far as butterflies here. Usually it's very hard to tell because they perish, and when we find them, even if we mark them, we're not sure how long ago they perished. But with butterfly shipments having been decreased for a while we were closed during March and April, the initial COVID surge, we saw a paper kite 3 months after we had gotten our last shipment of paper kites. So, you know, that individual was showing its age, and usually it's going to be a few weeks to maybe a month or so that we estimate they live in here, but that one had exceeded even that. And it was a rare opportunity for us to actually be confident that that individual had to be at least this old, because we had not received any since then. Now we're receiving butterflies on a weekly basis. Every Thursday or Friday we're getting a shipment of hundreds of butterflies in and having them go through the process to be released out here. That's how we can maintain our numbers. So it's hard to really have great data on longevity unless we're going to dedicate a team to do that science. And right now that's been our focus. So that was a nice, kind of a bonus that came out of the closure that we weren't looking for, but it helped us kind of see add a little bit more to our own internal knowledge on these guys and how long they live.
Well, and you talk about getting those shipments in. So for Morpho Mardi Gras and blue morphos being the start, I mean, how many blue morphos are being added through those shipments every week?
Well, it's for us, what we do is we ask for a much larger proportion of blue morphos to be in here so we can fill with the blue. We, like any other living space, we have a carrying capacity for how many butterflies we want in this area, make sure they have enough nectar and enough space. So it has a lot more to do with proportion than it does anything else. So we talk to our suppliers. One of the big suppliers we work with is in Costa Rica. We ask them to give us a much higher proportion of blue morphos than they normally would, and that allows us to show the blue. So no matter when you visit, there's a great chance of seeing a blue morpho. It's just this time we're going to have a lot more compared to others than normal. So we're going to see more blue morphos in proportion. And Morpho Mardi Gras goes through Fat Tuesday. So I think, don't have a calendar for me, I think that's around the 16th.
It is,
and
yeah.
then after that, we will still be full with butterflies. We'll just start getting more paper kites, more long wings, more Mormons, more of the other kinds, and the proportion will slide. So straight ahead is where we are prepped for construction. You can see in the background the emergence case windows for our butterflies. We have a area that we are using. Our staff bathroom is no longer available. It's become bug central, and that's where once construction starts, the butterflies will head into there. We've got some nice state-of-the-art emergence cases that are being shipped to us as part of this grant and this expansion. So we've had to give up our staff bathroom for the butterflies, but it'll be well worth it. I can hold it for 5 months.
Well, and I can attest, as somebody who's been in the existing entomology lab, the bug living quarters, it is very cramped in there.
Yeah.
And so I know that I'm excited to see, not only the staff having more space to work, but also, as you can kind of see on these renderings here that Kristina was showing, more space for visitors to be able to
Absolutely.
see the work that the staff is doing.
And that's the big emphasis behind the design team that we worked with, is we want to showcase what we do. Our entomology team does some great work, and they can live with the cramped spaces, and that's just part of the gig. But what we're not able to do is showcase what we're doing as well. So through the window exhibition, we're gonna have many more windows, much more opportunity for folks to see what it takes to be a bug scientist on a day-to-day basis. So we want to put ourselves a little bit more on show. So that means I'm gonna have to probably shower more regularly. My family will be thankful for that. But it just allows us just to, maybe it's not bragging because it's what we do every day, but kind of put it out in front of people and what it takes to showcase the great butterfly collection, the great bug collection. The horticulturist works are on show every day as well, so kind of will help show that complete picture and further that education mission that we have. So we're very excited for that. We're hoping completion, it's construction, so you never know exactly when, but we're looking at mid to late summer if all goes according to schedule, which again, I guarantee it won't go exactly according to the schedule, but that's our best guess. And then we'll have a great experience for our guests to come and learn holistically about conservation when it comes to butterflies, other bugs, and plants.
And it's not really impacting the typical experience that people. I mean, there's one or two small paths here that are closed, but as a percentage of the conservatory, you're still getting, maybe 90% of the space that you're normally walking through as a visitor. So it's really not impactful to your visit. You're not losing that much of the experience.
Since we're going in and out, we're not going on a one-way path right now. You have to be a little bit creative with how we've managed that. So it's still kind of a one-way path, but it's backtracking a little bit. So in some ways, you're extending your visit time.
On a day like today, I'm not going to complain about spending a little extra time.
Right.
We should make sure we mention, for those that are planning on visiting us, just like the garden, we're doing advanced sales, advanced tickets. We're limited to 25% capacity, trying to make sure that we don't get too crowded so that we're not part of the problem, that we can all get past this COVID pandemic together. So highly encourage folks to get tickets online ahead of time. Online sales close 30 minutes before that hour window. Like the garden, it's a time ticket event, so you get a ticket for entry within an hour. So if you get a 12 o'clock ticket, your entry time is between 12 and 1 o'clock. So if you're going to visit us, it pays to plan ahead and make sure that you get the ticket in advance, and you got to stop reserved for it.
There's a swallowtail down here.
Oh yeah.
Kind of highlighting some butterflies that are sitting still for us on our way out. Right?
Yeah.
My ID is correct there.
Tucked swallowtail. It's all of us get asymmetrical from time to time, so it's missing part of that tail.
Yeah.
The tail there. But that is, those tails are more to do with looks than anything else. And at this animal's age, you see that right wing is a little bit beat up as well. That's the best guess we have for how old they are, especially if they're not marked, is the
Just kind of wear on their wings.
Yeah, it's like all of us. Over time, life kind of takes its toll on you. I'm not quite as fresh faced as I was 10 years ago. These guys are kind of the same way.
And I think it's pretty active in here right now. You're talking about planning ahead for visits and getting those tickets in advance. And I know something, sort of a little insider tip, is those really sunny days. Even if it's cold outside, the more sun, the more active the butterflies are. And they're still pretty active right now. But I can imagine on a day when the bright sun is coming in here, not only are the butterflies more active, but it's also warmer. I think I would be taking off another layer in here if even just if the sun were out.
Yeah, we are. Our life support system and keeping this at least 75 degrees. So we are subject to Mother Nature. It gets hotter during the summer, so we can get into the 80s in here with high humidity. It's one of the things that people tend to get surprised about when they first get in here. Isn't so much the heat, but if it's humid and if the sun's out, that's getting a lot of more humidity into the air. And then it depends on the butterfly species too. The morphos are more diurnal. They fly more during the day. We adjust what butterflies we get based on seasonality as well. So for those that visit come Halloween, when the days are longer, we tend to get the crepuscular, or the butterflies that are more active at daybreak and sunset. So such as the owl butterflies, species that are represented in here throughout the year. So if you were to take a look at just species count, that stays relatively stable, depending on what butterfly farms are able to produce at the time. But the proportions are what change. So come October, you see a lot more owl butterflies. When we're living with less daylight, it makes sense to have butterflies that prefer that and are more active when the sun is setting or when the sun is rising. Right now we have a lot of blue morphos and a lot of diurnals, so that we're active while the sun is up. So you're absolutely right.
There's another swallowtail right there.
Oh yeah.
That one's a Mormon.
If it'll sit still for us.
A Mormon swallowtail. And a long wing with the red spots above it flittering around. And I'm still learning my butterfly IDs here. I've been here a little over a year now. And, it's been and definitely a year for the books. But over time you start to gather the knowledge with these guys. A lot of learning for me has been great. Anything else? I'm trying to think of what we've missed. We've seen the facility. We will have our native garden back over come this spring. That's another part of our mission is it's not just about the tropical butterflies, it's about the native butterflies as well. These guys are to help people come and learn about them, but the learning is only one part of the conservation, it's the inspiring action. So as we're approaching into spring, encouraging people to think about our native butterflies and planting plants that are great for our native butterfly species. Monarchs have been in the news, especially the western monarch with their decline. We have the eastern population that's also declining. So providing havens for our native butterflies through what plants we plant is also a huge importance right now. Getting those native nectar sources. For us, we have the Project Pollinator plant sale that comes every spring. I know the avid gardeners at St. Louis are starting to plan for what's going on, what they're going to be putting in the ground in a couple of months. So we always encourage them to think about our butterfly friends, our pollinator friends, the local bees and butterflies when you're planning out what you're putting in your garden. So that will go a long way, especially as we take up more space, if we can provide space for the migrating butterflies and the local pollinators as well. So learn about the tropics here, do as much as we can to help those wide-ranging efforts for conservation elsewhere, and then make sure your local actions are impactful as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Fred, for taking us on this tour. And I hope everyone who tuned in enjoyed. Don't forget to stop by and see these morphos while they're here for Mardi Gras. And we'll just end, as you mentioned earlier, with that beautiful contrast between the wintry landscape while we're here in the tropics. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.